Hey guys, it's Clovis, and we're going to be doing the S4 Gold Gran Turismo 3 license test. I'm going to be doing a tutorial for it. This is a tough challenge. I know what you're thinking. You know, all the S licenses and the golds, they're pretty tough. But this is one that's very dependent on execution. There's not a lot of opportunities to lose and kind of gain back time. You really have to do every segment following the line very, very, very tightly to get this gold. So it's not an extremely painful challenge. There's a couple tricky parts, like that last chicane, you can lose it all. That's like the one thing you really need to worry about in terms of being too greedy. But for example, the rest of it is just up to practice and execution. And luckily enough, for this test, you actually have very good demonstrations for learning the driving line of this test. So if you look back at some earlier examples, you see A3, you have this teaches you the driving line for this first corner, which is very, very, very important because at the exit here, that is the only opportunity you have all the way up until these S-curves, like, or this, whatever you call this. You have to exit at a high speed here because you're going to be carrying that speed all the way, and this is like a third of the track, so you have to make sure that you get this first corner perfectly. And again, rather than waiting until the end and realizing you were like a tenth of a second short, you may as well fly through this corner and then carry through the speed there. This tiny little curve, don't have to worry about that. You can full throttle it, just taking the line through. As long as you don't touch the sand, you can smoothly turn through this and you're good. Once you get to this point, however, you are looking at the not the A7 test, A6. Yeah, the A6 test. And again, practice this. A6 is a bit of a painful test, but getting good at it is so worth it because it teaches you how to take this in a very difficult to drive car, like a boat. So if you can take this driving line in a boat, then you definitely can in a racing car. And then for the end section, look at that, you've got A8. That teaches you this whole last section. It teaches you that you kind of maybe want to go out to the right to cut left. And then you can straighten up your car and slam the brake. And then, of course, this is the tricky part, the low speed. You don't want to hit the full throttle too early because your car will spin out and you will crash. But after you do that, once you're at this little bit at the end, you don't have to worry too much. Just as long as you take that last bit smoothly, you will be good. So let's try to apply this. Again, easier said than done. It will require plenty of attempts, but luckily there are ways to actually practice this and get the line down. So again, as usual, I'm going to do this until I get the gold. Then I'm going to show you the replay of the gold with telemetry and no commentary, so you can watch that as much as you need for reference. And then after that, I'm going to do a commentated review of the replay. Quickly, if you're wondering about this, it's just an emulated desync bug. It's kind of funny, but yeah. So again, you can see, probably could have done that first corner better, but I recommend just, you know, getting the track down, getting a decent lap, and then always you can look at your ghost and try and improve from your ghost from there. Slowed down a bit too much there, but it's okay. We can always go back after this, and the worse the lap is here, like, this is bad. This is really bad. There's no way we gold this, of course, now. It's just over. And funny enough, there's no cones here. There is no cones here. So you can actually cut that corner pretty riskily. No cones here either. And you have to worry about drifting out there. You have to straighten up the car before you get full throttle because you're going down to second gear. Any car this powerful, you can't really full throttle until you're like, at least in a straight line, or you're like in third gear. So it's a pretty short circuit, so there's not an insane amount of time to save, but saving a second is definitely possible. A car like this, you actually maybe do not want to hold gear. Again, as I said, it's worth being very risky to nail this first corner. It really is. It does pay off. And if you think about like a real racer versus Gran Turismo 3, like you really can just restart that. You really just can. And you can see if you're not faster than the Ghost, you just reattempt it until you nail this corner. Again, holding onto the gear seems like it's not the play there, so don't do that. So again, every little bit matters. You see the exit speed being slightly higher there, just gets me to be a car or two ahead. And with a tight margin on this track, it does make a huge difference. It really does. Ooh, the sand. That is so bad. See how much time I lose from touching the sand? Like, it's just over. Grass is fine. Sand, it's over. And again, if you're not ahead of that first corner, you should restart. It doesn't even matter if you're like, you know, if you're like a tenth or two off the time. I really do think you should just always be ahead at this point, because you'll never get this time back on that first main straight. I did kind of graze the sand there, which isn't good, but luckily it didn't matter. That was really bad. And again, if you touch the curb there, you are very subject to spinning out, so you need to control it basically instantly. Cutting the curbs here is very important. And again, you're gonna drift out there, you just are. Because you're gonna want to get on the throttle as early as possible to make this. So this will give us a silver. It shouldn't give us a gold, I don't think. We'll probably miss out on it by like 3/10. Yeah, there you go. But this is good. This is good because now we need to save a third of a second. We've got it. So anytime we cut ahead of our Ghost now is very, very, very good for us. This first corner, we want to be just even slightly ahead of that Ghost, and that's a very good sign. Could probably keep turning without full throttle and just wait a bit before we get on it, and we should get a better exit. Pretty tough to beat, but it is worth like resetting until you get it. Even if it's frustrating, it is going to save you hassle later in the track, for sure. See, it's tricky, isn't it? It is tricky. It feels like you got it perfect, but this car's quite fast. That turbo power makes it very difficult to steer when you've actually got a decent amount of pace through your turn. So we'll see what happens if we just do this while we're slightly behind, because there was a... yeah, see there when we touched the sand, it's definitely too late. If you are about the same pace as the car, it really isn't the worst deal in the world, but it just saves you the hassle later on if you're ahead early, so. At least give it a fair attempt. You want to be basically touching the ghost at least. Scary corner. Scary corner. Having to give that self your push through the corner and, you know, naturally wanting to hold full throttle as early as possible will catch you out. See, it all looks so good until you realize how wide you're going and it's just too late to let go of the throttle because you lose all your exit speed. We'll stick with this and see how it goes. Now again, watch for spinning on this curve when you touch it. That touching the sand there just lost us the whole run. If we didn't touch the sand there, we maybe could have closed this one out. Going for a wide exit. So you can see how much time there is to save at that ending section there. And also how much there is to lose. So we won't get the gold here. Miss out on it. Like, this will beat the previous one by like half a tenth. Yeah. 30 milliseconds pretty much. But this is fine, because now we can race against this ghost. And it should be nicer to run against. Oh, I actually tapped accelerate when I meant to tap the brake there. That was not what I was supposed to do. Yep, happy with this. I think that's good enough. Ah, see, that's the tricky part there. If you want to straighten up when your car's subject to drifting there, and really go gung-ho, you end up going quite wide, and if you touch the sand there, again, it's just gone. So this is nice. Not terrible. you need to let your car drift into the left there before applying the throttle, so you turn into, like, your drift. Wide exit, so you don't drift out as much. Smooth. Smooth as possible. And it gets very, very tight towards the gold, so we're not golding here, but we have another ghost to run against. I really don't know what you can do apart from when you get this close, just keep trying to beat your ghost. I know that sounds really, like, lazy advice, but that actually is what the ghost is for. It's so you can you have feedback of when you're doing things right and when you're not. We seem to do this first corner slower every single time. So again, if you follow my advice and nail the first corner and like close it out, then you could probably get that gold run. Easier said than done though. Always easier said than done when it comes to the gold licenses. Whoop. Again, even how you turn there actually determines your speed a lot. That was just bad. Very bad. Again, if you're behind, it's worth going for a risk like that, because otherwise you're not going to go to it anyway. That was nice. That was actually probably the best I've ever done that corner. Use that curb to help you steer into the corner, otherwise you can go quite wide there. And now we cut to the left and cut back. Straighten up the car before you slam the brakes. Turn in. No full throttle until your car is straight. Until your car is straight, there is no full throttling or you will spin out. And then drive as smoothly at the end and as carefully as possible. Oh, really didn't want to be on the grass, but it's okay. We're quite ahead. This should be the gold. Yeah, there we go. So we get the gold by a quarter of a second. Very tough, very tight test, but there are some opportunities that you might not see to actually gain a significant amount of time. So, now that we've got this replay, we can save it, have a look at it. So let's have a look at the replay with telemetry and no commentary. So you can look at this run for reference. And then I'll go through the lap with commentary and explain a few things. Alright, so now let's go through the replay with commentary. So, obviously full throttle until we get to this first corner. Now again, you can... I think it's literally best to trial and error this corner until you just get the best exit possible. You'll see input-wise at the bottom left how I do it. Of course, you can go back to the previous no commentary thing, because I do pause during these commentaries. Now, you can see that I drive left onto the grass onto this curb. That way, I have a wider angle to turn into, and that actually helps you with the exit, because then the wider you turn in, the earlier you'll be straight and be able to apply the full throttle. Even if it looks like it loses a slight amount of speed here. When you exit this turn faster, you carry all of that speed for, this entire section, all the way up until here. So you really just want to trial and error and sit here and reset until you get the perfect first corner. And then I'll be a bit more technical when it comes to this last half, because that actually matters a lot. I think for this one, you just kind of... You learn how to do it, and you just keep doing it until you get that one perfect run, and then carry that through. Because the more time you save very early on, the more you can afford to make a slight, minor mistake and lose a tiny bit of time later on and still get the gold. So you can see at this point I've got two wheels on the grass, and I'm just turning sharply all the way to the right with full throttle. And as I said, with the two tires on the right side of the grass and now two touching the curb on the left here, and not the sand, because there is sand here and that slows you down. So you just want to be, you can cut the grass, but when it comes to sand, you just want to touch the curb. You do not want to touch the sand. If you don't have a lineup like I did, you probably want to restart just until you get this perfectly and use as much road as possible. You can see that I literally went onto the curb at the start, cut through the grass, and now I'm on the curb again. And you actually kind of have to do that to get this gold, so keep at it. And you'll be rewarded, because now you can just full throttle. Try to just drive as smoothly as possible with your turning here. You're obviously going to full throttle the whole thing. You don't need to let go of the accelerator or brake there. Now, here's where it gets tricky. So if you turn sharply before you slam the brakes, your car is not balanced, and this is actually a huge problem. So you need to make sure that your car is stable before you slam the brakes. Then you can actually attempt to start turning while braking. Obviously, your turn is less effective, but because when you're braking, the weight of your car goes to the front wheels, and the front wheels are always used to steer, to turn, it will actually help you get through the corner. It'll help maneuver your car towards the right. So the way I approach this is from the left, getting ready to cut the grass on the right side, and then it gets a bit more technical. So I tap the throttle, but I don't commit to it. I'm turning right once I think I want to turn into this corner. I'm holding right the whole time, and then using the throttle to control how much my car is turning in, as opposed to my actual steering. So I hold the right steering, and then I'll tap the throttle. That'll kind of send it through to the right, but then I'll get off the throttle, and I will only apply the throttle again once I know my car is going to make it. There you can kind of see. So even though it was only a split second where I went from full throttle and dipped and went back onto full throttle, what that actually does is kind of let your car... How do I say? It kind of neutralizes the weight of your car. It's not constantly being pushed all the way to the left. That little tiny bit of a release of pushing the car forward just rebalances and resets the car, and now the car sticks, and you can full throttle and full turn right and cut that curb there. Alright, so now this is actually tricky as well. Obviously, you're going to be turning right, left, and then cutting the curb, but when you touch the curb, your car is actually likely to spin out. So you need to control this very, very, very carefully. What I will do is, what I try to do is, as your left tires are about to touch the left curb, let go of the throttle slightly, and then try to make sure the car is straighten up and it's got the grip, and then make sure you're full throttle, and then you want to be turning left in order to not get to the sand on the right. You can hear I'm probably a bit too wide here. It looks like it, but also you do want to kind of cut through like this on the apex when you're doing these turns. So instead of following the curb all the way, if you come out a little bit wide, you can cut more this way. You'll see. It's like at this point, this is now where I'm full throttle and turning sharply to the left because I'm going to go over this curb. The curb is going to make my car slip, which is a good and bad thing. So with making our car kind of like spin out and behave differently, obviously that's bad. If you didn't control it, you would just spin out and you'd crash. But our car isn't really turning enough to the left that we really want it to. So if we graze the curb, it kind of makes the car slip a little bit. And then our car can slip to the left, and then we can straighten the car up. Like that. You can see my car starts kind of veering towards the left while it's skimming over the curb. And I'm still turning sharply left because you really need to make sure you don't touch the sand here. So you can see, even though I'm at this angle, I'm still turning sharply left until I'm like 100% sure that my car's straight. So I didn't even do this like 100% optimally. You can see I opt to not touch the curb. This is just me being very, very, very careful because being slightly off the curb and not using all the road is still goldable, but if you touch that sand, you lose all of your speed. And again, you'll be carrying your speed all the way until that, the very, very tight hairpin where you're forced to slow down anyway. So again, this next section, very important. Remember, there's no cones here, so that means you can actually afford to be risky and cut this corner here. You're basically turning this chicane into like a very tight straight line. And then also, it matters when you exit the chicane, you'll be turning to the right. But then you have to correct it by counter-steering to the left to straighten your car up so that you can slam the brakes in a straight and stable line. So this is, again, very, very technical, but it's worth knowing what you're doing. So again, full throttle, flick to the left. Look how early we're flicking through. See? So we got like now we've basically turned the chicane into just a slight turn to the right. That's kind of how you treat this. And you can see again, our right tires are going to go over the grass. This is just to make sure we cut through the line as much as possible. And then so right now our car is actually going very fast. It's steering to the right. And if we do this timing wrong, our run is over. So you kind of need to wait until you're pointed towards the curb at least, or your car is pointed to the right. And then now you can see my car is straight. But you can see immediately after my car was quote-unquote straight, I tap the steering to the left. I just flick the steering to the left, and that will neutralize the car because the car is still veering to the right. This stuff isn't as obvious when you're driving, but when you drive enough and you keep practicing, you will eventually get a feel for this. You'll start to understand that when you slam the brakes without flicking your car to the counter steer and correct it, your car will just veer one way or the other. You really don't want to do that. So there, I quickly flick the stick to the left, which is the opposite way where my car was going. So my car was veering to the right, so I flick it to the left to neutralize it. Then I can slam the brakes. And you'll notice I'm not slamming the brakes right on the left. I actually want to be on middle of the road or even to the right of it. The only problem with the right is, well, we just basically cut a corner very, very, very tightly, steering right as much as possible. We can't really go further right than what we just did. So this middle of the road position, even though it may not seem optimal, is probably the best position we're going to be because you want to approach this last corner a bit wider. Because the wider you go, the less likely your car is to spin out entirely. And now again, this is the one time you really need to worry about spinning out. This is the only part of the whole track where you're actually going slow enough that you're very likely to spin out. It's guaranteed unless you control your throttle. So you have to be really, really, really careful here. And this is why the practice runs are good. Again, you can see I'm just gently on the throttle until... Look at this. So there was like a slight counter steer there. And my car is actually pointing towards this curb, which is good. Like if your car is pointed just towards pure sand, it's not good enough. But when there's a curb, I mean, you know, that's where your car is actually supposed to be. So pointed towards the curb and then full throttle. You can get back on the full throttle and you should have grip by the time you get to the curb to turn left. to steer to the left. As long as you do not touch the sand here or spin out, you'll get through this fine. So you see, most of the time, if you cut that hairpin like very, very tightly, you're going at a low speed and turning sharply, you're a lot more likely to spin out. But if you approach it a little bit wider, you can get on the throttle early, straighten up early, and full throttle as early as possible here matters a lot, because again, look, now you're full throttle until the very end of the track. So getting on the throttle as early as possible, obviously it's always important, but setting yourself up so that you can get on it earlier without spinning out is just, it helps you out a lot, because then you just get on the full throttle, do that last little turn as smoothly as possible, and then you get the gold. And there you go. Not bad, huh? Not bad. So that is S4 gold license. So I hope that tutorial was useful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.